In a kingdom shrouded by dark forests and foreboding mountains, there lived a princess named Snow White. Her beauty was unmatched, with skin as pale as bone, lips as crimson as blood, and hair as black as midnight. The villagers whispered that she was blessed by ancient forgotten gods, blessings that only made her stepmother, the queen, seethe with envy and rage. The queen, a sorceress of the darkest arts, possessed a mirror of ancient origins. This was no ordinary mirror, but a sentient artifact bound to the queen's will by a pact made in blood. Every day she asked it, "Mirror, mirror, on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And every day it answered, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." But as Snow White grew older, her beauty became a curse. The mirror, with a voice like a whispering wind through dead leaves, one day declared, "Snow White, my queen, is now the fairest of them all." The queen's heart, blackened by years of dark magic, twisted with fury. She could not bear the thought of being outshined, especially by a child she had never loved. In a secret chamber, lit only by the eerie glow of blue flames, the queen concocted a plan. She called upon a huntsman, a man with a shadowed past and a heart as cold as winter. She handed him a blade forged in the fires of the underworld, a blade that could not fail in its deadly purpose. "Take her into the forest," the queen hissed, "and carve out her heart. Bring it to me as proof." The huntsman obeyed, leading Snow White deep into the heart of the forest, where even the bravest of souls dared not tread. As they walked, the trees seemed to close in, their branches like skeletal hands reaching out to snatch the innocent girl. But as the huntsman raised the cursed blade, something within him faltered. Snow White's innocence, her pure terror, touched a part of him he had long forgotten. Instead of plunging the knife into her chest, he dropped it and fled, leaving Snow White alone in the dark, haunted forest. Snow White ran deeper into the woods, her fear driving her forward until she stumbled upon an abandoned cottage. Exhausted, she collapsed inside, surrounded by dust-covered furniture and the eerie silence of a home long forsaken. She didn't know that this cottage belonged to 7 cursed souls, dwarfs by day, but something far more sinister by night. As the sun set, the 7 dwarfs returned. They had once been men, but a dark curse had twisted their forms, trapping them in an endless cycle of torment. By night, they transformed into monstrous beings, driven by an insatiable hunger for human flesh. Yet, when they saw Snow White, something within them stirred, a fragment of their lost humanity. For a time, Snow White lived with the dwarfs, who protected her during the day and locked themselves away at night. But the queen soon learned that the huntsman had deceived her. Enraged, she turned to her darkest magic. She conjured a poisoned apple, imbued with the souls of the damned. Anyone who bit into it would fall into a deathless sleep, haunted by endless nightmares, their soul trapped between life and death. Disguising herself as an old hag, the queen made her way to the cottage. Snow White, kind and trusting, took the apple without hesitation. As her teeth sank into the flesh of the fruit, her eyes widened in horror. The taste was bitter, like ash and decay. She tried to scream, but her voice was stolen by the curse. She collapsed, her body cold and still, as the queen's laughter echoed through the forest. The dwarfs found her lifeless body, and driven mad by grief, placed her in a coffin of glass and iron, hoping that somehow she might awaken. But the queen's curse was powerful, and Snow White's soul wandered the shadowy realms between life and death, lost and alone. Years passed, and the legend of Snow White's beauty spread throughout the kingdom, drawing the attention of a wandering prince. He was a man of many secrets, with eyes that had seen far too much. When he found the coffin, he felt an inexplicable pull towards the pale, lifeless girl inside. With a mixture of sorrow and reverence, he kissed her cold lips, hoping to free her from her torment. But this was no fairy tale kiss. As his lips touched hers, he felt a sudden, violent pull, as if something dark and ancient had been awakened. Snow White's eyes snapped open, but they were no longer the eyes of an innocent girl. They were dark, hollow, and filled with a hunger that no living soul could satisfy. Snow White rose from her coffin, her movements unnatural, her beauty now a twisted mockery of life. The prince recoiled in horror as she turned to him, her lips curling into a smile that was anything but kind. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice like the rustling of dead leaves. "You freed me." But what had been freed was not the Snow White of old. The queen's curse had taken root, transforming her into something else entirely, a revenant, driven by an insatiable need for vengeance. Snow White returned to the castle, where the queen sat gloating in her darkened chamber. When she saw her stepdaughter standing before her, alive but not truly living, the queen's triumph turned to terror. "You wanted my heart," Snow White said, her voice cold and hollow. "Now it's your turn to give me yours." With a speed that defied her appearance, Snow White lunged at the queen, tearing her heart from her chest with a single brutal motion. The queen's scream echoed through the castle as her life force was drained into Snow White, who reveled in the dark power she now wielded. But Snow White's victory was bittersweet. The curse had consumed her entirely, and she was now a creature of darkness, forever trapped between life and death. She took the throne, ruling with a cold iron grip, her once beautiful kingdom falling into ruin and despair. The dwarfs, now fully monstrous, became her loyal enforcers, ensuring that no one dared defy their undead queen. And the prince, who had unknowingly unleashed this terror, wandered the lands as a broken man, haunted by the memory of the girl he had tried to save. Snow White, the fairest of them all, had become the darkest of legends, a tale whispered in fear by those who still remembered the days before the kingdom fell into shadow. And so, the kingdom remained under her cursed reign, a dark and twisted reminder that sometimes even the fairest of them all can become the most monstrous,